stole it from the Aboriginals. It's stolen through all of history. Land gets stolen. It's how it works. All stole it from the Aboriginals.
When I was reading to prepare for this interview, I was quite surprised to see you use the word Aborigines talking about African Americans.
Freedom that a lot of people don't have because of that.
Because you used the word Aboriginal.
Aborigines, which means what? Black folks. You never find a white Aborigine. Aborigines are called natives, or they're always dark-skinned people. You and I are Aborigines.
Now, first, we have to ask ourselves, who were reading these books in the 16th century, 15th, 17th century? When you look at the images of the American Indian, the face of the American Indian, before the 18th century, they all black or Negro. They don't look like the present day mainstream quote unquote Native American, which is a Mongoloid, a more Asian phenotype. You don't see that until, the late 18th century and, the 20th and 21st century. But I'm going to get back to that in a second because there's some more layers to that in itself. Now, you don't see those images. When you look at these tobacco ads in Virginia, you see you see black people smoking the tobacco pipes. And what part in history did Virginia play? Virginia was the first colony they set up. We were the face of America when we were on all these allegorical figures, images, and statues. That was before the United States as we know it existed as a government. That was in the United States haven't been in effect since 1776. So before that, you'll see us on a lot of images around the world, the American Indian, as being Negro featured. But now you have a reconstruction of history. So all our elders from the 16th, 15th, 17th, 14th century, they passed on and gone. So now you got those generational gaps. Tobacco is an American crop. Especially, it was always an American crop. Tobacco got introduced to Europe and all of these other places, but tobacco's from here. Coca is from here. So these are American Indians you see in these old images on these tobacco ads and in early America. Africans don't cultivate tobacco. Tobacco was not from Africa. There was no tobacco in Africa. That crop comes from North and South America. The word indigenous. Now the prefix in the word indigenous is Indi. Indi comes from indigo. Indigo being the darkest color in the spectrum. Blue-black. That's where the term blue-black comes from. Now the prefix in the word indigenous, genus, means to originate from. So there you go, indigenous. We must understand America, you gotta understand, is like anywhere else, because you go to Asia, you have your indigenous Asians, and you have your present day, like you go to Southeast Asia, you'll see the Negroid, Asiatic phenotypes in those places. You go, same thing in the Pacific, same thing everywhere else. America is no different. You have the same thing in America. You had the Asian people migrated here, and it was quote unquote Negroid featured black people, Aboriginal people here too. So there's no understanding about America, whereas they want to make the narrative that all Indians look the same. You know, they want to make the narrative that Indians specifically look like the people in the plains. If you don't look like Sitting Bull, you ain't from this country. A lot of these white people, they travel. They see the world. They see people that look like you and me in these countries. These people travel all over the world. We stuck in the box. We don't travel. We don't see. And I'm not saying we have to travel. I'm saying we don't have any understanding. And that is the difference between us and our ancestors, because our ancestors knew about people across the ocean, the river, and they traveled. They lived off the earth, so it was a global indigenous community. We traveled, traded with each other. We had an understanding of other people. You know what I mean? We all had a similar culture. We basically lived off the earth in the wilderness. That's why when you look at all of these indigenous cultures, you see them in face paint. You see them with the feathers. They half naked. I mean, that's earth. The Mooneye Negroes and albinos, destroyed by the Cherokee and seen in Panama. The Mooneye people are a race of people from Cherokee tradition who are said to have lived in Appalachia until the Cherokee expelled them. They are mentioned in a 1797 book by Benjamin Smith Barton, who explains they are called Mooneye people because they saw poorly during the day. A book written in 1797 by Benjamin Smith Barton, an American botanist, naturalist, and physician, New Views of the Origins of the Tribes and Nations of America, explains they were called Mooneye people because they saw very poorly throughout the day and had a number of different features from the rest of Native Americans. Chief John Ross, who was 7/8 white, 1/8 Cherokee, was elected leader of the Cherokee Nation. As several generations passed, the mixed blood Cherokees began to take control of tribal affairs, and fewer full bloods remained in position of power. The mixed bloods were often in business with white traders and got lucrative government and tribal contracts, increasing their influence in the tribe. A lot of people, they like, man, what happened to the Indians and Native Americans? How they get white? And so on and so on. I'm here to tell you people, the Cherokee, they been white. Chief John Ross was a 7/8 of a white man. He's pretty much a white man. His wife is white. So if these mixed in white Cherokees marrying white generation, white. And when you look at the tribe now, I'm here to tell you why. You see what you see now because that's what it was. And then if you have a system in place, whereas if it's a half Indian and a white is an Indian, or a white is an Indian, you got race laws and color laws, that's why. And you got to understand a lot of this, it all goes back to politics, because a lot of the elders or the original Cherokees, what they did was, you understand first, the Cherokee were big pro-British allies. They was allies to the government, because I showed you, Indians that were not in amity with the government have conflict. They went under the Negro title. So a lot of the Cherokees, that's why they pretty much here today. So what the original Cherokees did was let these Europeans and whites into their tribe, and they amalgamated out. Not just the Cherokee, a lot of other tribes too. That's what, they looked at it as a way of survival, when it really wasn't, because we don't have America today. All of this tribal, conflict we had, but that's a whole nother topic in itself. Now, what I'm saying is, pretty much, when they was adopted into these nations and when they came into these tribes, that was a way of getting resources to the land. So they'll marry an Indian woman. European men, white men, in order for them to get access to the land, they had to go through the matriarch. They had to go through the Indian woman, the female. and they had to have some type of tribal affiliation or so on. So a lot of them early on time, like really like 1600s, when they first got here, they got adopted and got into tribes by marriage, and you understand over time they started getting political power, that amalgamation. You see what I'm saying? So pretty much what's going on today is majority of the tribes on the East Coast and east of the Mississippi are white. You see what I'm saying? And they own the resources and all of that. We can't have it. They don't want us having it. You understand when politics come to play? Because if we had our tribes, languages, and culture intact, it wouldn't even be no use for them to even be here. See, they got us under religion. Biggest things, obstacles with us is they got the Africa paradigm in itself, and you know what comes with that, and Christianity. This is religion. So we got the Bible and the Africa thing. As early as the late 19th century, the 19th annual report of the Bureau of American Ethnology noted that a considerable proportion of the blood of the Southern Negro of the United States is unquestionably Indian. The people were Indian, but you have to understand with laws and with these colonies and states that were formed, they made it illegal for you to say you were Indian or put that on the census. The people knew who they were. We're talking in the 19th century, they were like, well, the point we at right now, we've been generational gaps, and we're off grid on who we are. But in the 1900s, those people still knew what they were. They still had a lot of that oral history intact. And what I'm saying is these states like South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, in the Southeast, where a lot of this was going on, they knew who the population and who the people were. So they're telling you, oh, they have Indian blood. And then they were using the term Negro. The term African American didn't even exist in the 1900s. The term African American didn't exist in the 20th century. The term African American didn't exist till 1988. Nobody was using African or African American, it was Negro. Section 1, the Act of 1740. Section 1 declares all Negroes, Indians, free Indians in amity with this government, Negroes, mulattoes, and mestizos who are now free accepted to be slaves, the offspring to follow the condition of the mother, and that such slaves are chattel person. Section 2, under the provision, it has been uninformally held that color is prima facie evidence that the party bearing the color of the Negro, mulatto, mestizo is a slave, but the prima facie result does not follow from the Indian color. Section 3, Indians and the descendants of Indians are regarded as free Indians in amity with this government until contrary be shown. And the second proviso of Section 1 of the Act of 1740, it is declared that every Negro, Indian, mulatto, and mestizo is a slave unless the contrary can be made to appear. Yet, in the same, it is immediately thereafter provided the Indians in amity with this government accepted, in which the burden of proof shall lie on the defendant, that is, on the person claiming the Indian plaintiff to be slave. This later clause or proviso is not regarded as furnishing the rule. The race of slave Indians, or of Indians not in amity to this government, the state, is extant, and hence the previous part of the proviso has no application. The Negro Act of South Carolina, the colonial race laws in Virginia, the foundation of the United States. This is political. these race laws they made to take us out of existence. In the Negro law of South Carolina, it tells you, it says, if these Indians are not in amity with this government, they are out of it. They do not exist. These people are extinct. It clearly says that in the Negro Act of South Carolina. If you brought it in a paper bag, you have a Negro fee, it's an issue. That is political. That is how this thing is done. These people have the complexion of protection, which is light skin and long hair. But according to what we told, Native Americans are Asian featured people, Mongolian phenotype. These people don't have the Mongolian phenotype. They just have light skin and long hair. So what is this really about? Complexion for connection. They fit the stereotypical look. And then I asked this question for a lot of the tribes on the East Coast, because most of the tribes on the East Coast and the South are white. Why is that not the same for the tribes out West? When we look at the tribes out West, majority of them look Asian. Mongoloid features. So what's really going on? I'll tell you what's going on. Tribes east of the Mississippi, we already know that they didn't written these people out of history. So when they said that there were no more Indians in the South, they said that they didn't start recognizing tribes until the 90s. So what happened? I'll tell you what happened. When they started, you had all of these European descended people come out of nowhere and say, we're Indian. And that's the name of the game. Complexion for protection or complexion for connection. Because if they didn't made it to the point where if you are a melanated person and you have Negroid feature traits or phenotypes, they didn't systematically say, oh, they put you under the black title. Now we know in everyday world, we know we phenotypically black, or black ain't an ethnicity. So about time the photo camera was invented in the middle of the 1800s, the black tribes that they were warring with for 200 years were enslaved, colonized, and on plantations. So those tribes in the Southeast were pretty much, you see images of those Indians, but they were reclassified and colonized, so you see them, you're like, oh, these are Negroes and slaves, or that's a slave, that's a slave. You see these Indians, they're just not in cultural regalia. That's what they look like. Those are the people Europeans seen when they first got here. So that middle 18th century period, the East Coast part of America was pretty much colonized. They've been already conquered those lands. 1776 is when the U.S. was recognized as a nation. So, by that middle of the 18th century, that's probably around that whole Louisiana Purchase timeline and that whole period when they start going out west and going for those lands. You understand, the tribes out west was not colonized. So more of the tribes of the people out west were more Asian looking Native Americans out west and in the Plains region. So that's why you see all those photos of those Asian phenotypical people, or present day Native Americans as we see. You see a lot of images of them because that's when they first they start taking photos of those people. That's when they start exploring those lands. So our people they came here in around 16th, 15th century. They was going to war from us. All those wars were fought. All you had left in the Southeast was the Seminole. There are rambling hunting parties of them to be met with all over lower Louisiana. They are at war with the Caroquis and liked by neither the red nor white people. And this, what I'm saying, this here distinguishes the Choctaw and lets you know they were a black Indian nation We're one of the most powerful tribes in the Southeast. It's letting you know they're not liked by the white or red people. That right there lets you know who the people are. In present day Louisiana, in the 18th century, at that time, is not the same Louisiana. Louisiana then was from Louisiana to Montana, the Dakotas, and Arkansas. Colonized the eastern seaboard. They're making their way. They're going into the interior, and they seeing these these hostile black tribes, just giving them that smoke. Then this is another thing I need you guys to understand. Let's talk about Upper Louisiana. What was going on in Upper Louisiana? You had black tribes up there too. Don't believe me? Well, it's a book called Throughout the Interiors of North America by Jonathan Carver. Now, this is a painting called A Man and Woman of the Outagamie. This is in Wisconsin. Come on. Look at the hair. Look at these people. This is undeniable. This is Upper Louisiana. Now, I'm going to show you this. They got this book on auction. And it's clearly, this is the Nadawasi, or the Nadawasis, or what you call the Sioux Indians now. Look at these people. The book is on auction, it's online. Look, you see the people? Look how they look. Come on. We've been here. And those people had a relationship. You understand, the Mississippi River. That's how we went up and down and moved, and that was our transportation. So them tribes in those areas had a relationship with the people in Lower Louisiana. It's just Lower Louisiana is the same people that was in Lower Louisiana then. It's the same people that's in Lower Louisiana now. Stevenson says that the Indians of Manabe, comprising the districts of Esmeraldas, Rio Verde, Atacamas, on the seashore of Papillon are full of Zambos and produced by a ship full of Negroes who came into the country before the Spaniards, killed the former inhabitants, kept the women, formed a mixed race. They are tall, of blackish color, with soft curly hair, large eyes, flat noses, thick lips, and etc., while the true Zambos, or modern offspring of Indians and Negroes, are of a deep copper color, with thick hair not curled, small eyes, sharp noses, and good lips, are all Zambos. But this is what you need to pay attention to. And produced by a ship full of Negroes who came into the country before Spaniards. The name of this painting, this is the painting that they have in Madrid, Spain. It's Zambo Chiefs in Esmeraldas, Ecuador. Now, I just read about the ship full of Negroes that came before Spanish, that they document, coming before the Spanish. And these are the people that they call the Zambos. These are the rulers in, that pre-Columbia. That's why they have this painting in Spain. This was in 1599, pretty much the late 15th, early 16th century. Now, you ask yourself, why would they have a painting in Spain of 3 Negroes? And you can see the gold in their nose. These is like the elite that was there before the Spanish got there, and that's what they're not telling you. I'll just put the pieces together and showed you. These are the elite. These are the people that had, that pretty much ruled that before, the Spanish arrived, and that's why they got this. These are the people pretty much Spanish explorers seen when they got to South America in Ecuador. Yeah, this from a pre-Columbia Museum in Manabe, Ecuador. This from the Archaeological Museum of Salongo. And this is the same area of the painting I just showed you of the 3 men with the gold and the spears. This man's phenotypes is undeniably Negro. Nothing Mongoloid, as you can see. So this is from that same area. I'm putting the pieces together for you guys to see we've been there. We were already there. You know what I'm saying? So these are the oldest people, of that area. The evidence is undeniable. Some of you may be familiar with a woman named Mildred Lovin, or a movie called Lovin. Now, it was a lot of controversy surrounding the fact that the woman herself said, "I am not black, I'm Indian." And her family also says she's Indian. They even provided the marriage license. She's a Rappahannock Indian from Virginia. Mildred Lovin looked exactly like the Matapani, the Pa Monkey. Look at the images of the Matapani in the 18th century and Pa Monkey tribes. And she looked just like them people. She Rappahannock, and that's in Northern Virginia. Look just like the same. Like, I don't see, it shouldn't be no confusion surrounding that, but you gotta understand, miseducation is the issue. Because they don't know the history of American Indians in the Southeast being darker people of a Negro trait or phenotype. Meaning we don't look Asian or like the people out west. They don't understand the diversity in this continent as far as in features.
What some people are saying is that there were too many blacks in America in the 15th century for them all to have come here by slavery.
In early 1560s, a Spanish official wrote to the king that in the island of Puerto Rico there are above 15,000 Negroes and less than 500 Spaniards, and in all of the islands of Hispaniola there may be 20,000 Spaniards and there are over 30,000 Negroes. The same case in the island of Cuba and in Veracruz, Puerto de Cavalos, which is in Honduras, and in Nombre de Dios, Cartagena, Santa Maria, and in the coast of Venezuela, where there are 20 Negroes to one white man. Now let's look at this time frame, 1560. And during the 15th century, 16th century, and so on, Spanish Jesuits were sending letters back to Spain, and they specifically referred to the indigenous people, Indians, as Negro throughout South America and the Caribbean. So what you got to understand is another thing is Spaniards lived around Africans. They were in Spain. They were around the Moors. They had already went into Africa, Portuguese and Spanish. They had already they was in Africa dealing with Moors that was in their countries before they even came to the Americas. So they seen the same looking phenotype. They seen the same phenotype people in Africa and in Spain, and they seen those same looking people or similar looking people when they came here. So now you see why the term Negro is thrown. So when you say he's in 1560, there was an island. No, those islands was full of Indians. Those are Haitians, Mayans. Okay. Well, they're like, well, why do you say that? Well, when you look at the Black Primitive Nations by Professor Rafinesky, when he talks about the pre-Columbian so-called black nations in America, he mentions the ancient caracals of Haiti. And then when you look in a lot of Columbus journals and things, they discuss the Haiti and the voodoo traditions that they use being, a lot of it is identical to today's Haitian voodoo. But that's another topic. But when you talk about the ancient caracals, wow, you have a city in Mexico called Caracol. And it makes you think, So you have these Haitian caracals, people of Haiti, because, the Dominican Republic and Haiti is really one territory. And Dominican Republic side, was colonized by the Spanish, and the Haitian side was by the French. And, on the Haitian side, the rebellions, they fought back. They pretty much kicked the French ass. And I can't really say that for the Spanish portion, the Spanish territory of the island, because You know, a lot of those people mixed in. You know, they're the same people, but I would say Dominicans are a little bit watered down, meaning they didn't put on the fight that the Haitians did. And Haitians pretty much maintain who they are. Genetically, they're not mixed. You know, they got their Negroid features. Whereas the Dominicans still have their Negroid features, but a lot of them are watered down and mixed. You talk about the Mayan Empire or the so-called Mayan Empire, a lot of people would say, well, that was just in Mexico. I would disagree. I would say Mexico and those Caribbean, a lot of those islands, you have Mayan, you know, the Mayans were in North America in the Southwest, in Arizona. Mayans were in Georgia. Look at, when you look at these pictures, when I see a lot of these old Mayan murals, and I see the head wraps and the beanies of today's so-called West Indians, Rastafarians, you know, look at a lot of the Belizean people. When you see these head wraps, I'm like, this is exactly identical, because those are the same people. You know, that's what you gotta understand. You know, the people don't exist on paper. They've been racially reclassified. And when you look at, like, the Hispanic people, those are not the indigenous Mayans or Aboriginal Mayans. Now, we know Asians migrated to the Americas. Now, this is a mid-1600s image of the King of Virginia, and this is John Smith. This is the same John Smith that got with Pocahontas and the one we hear about, and they portray in the Disney movies, and I'm like, okay, I seen this picture, this image, and it took, if you got a trained eye, you'll put two and two together. And I actually came across the image to the left. Actually, I was researching some other stuff pertaining to the Virginia Indians and tobacco, because that's one thing I've been putting a lot of focus in, because you got to start with Virginia. That's the first colony. And when you look at these images, they show you the tobacco, the same people with the tobacco skirts, the feather headdress, dark black, like, and I'm like, I seen the image. I seen when he's pulling the hair. So I'm like, oh, hold up now, we getting somewhere. Because now we look on the left, this is a tall black man. And they did say Power Tom was about 6'5". And I'm like, whoa, because this image on the left is pretty damn identical to the statue they got in the Virginia Historical Society, which is of what you call a black Negro man, Indian. So, man, these images, they get whiter and whiter over time. There's plenty more images like this. They whitewash them over time. And our people, we don't do any research. We don't do any homework. We don't even seek our history and who we is. We just say, because, you know, it's not going to be like when we do research on this, it's going to be under Native American, so on and so on. And if you're looking for your history under African American or African, you in the wrong place, and you're not going to find that. So you gotta know it's a timeline when it comes to this history. The Native Americans and a lot of the people they talking about between the 15, 16, 1700s is what you'll call present-day black people before the reclassification, because most of that is going to be in the southern part of the United States and the Caribbean islands. Figure likely meant to portray Powhatan leader, made in 1750 and used to advertise a tobacconist shop in England until 1900. At the time the sign was made, the Powhatan Confederacy had been destroyed and its people enslaved for decades. Made in the shape of a Native American from Virginia, United States, this was a tobacconist sign to attract customers into the shop. Virginia was the site of the first European settlement in the United States in 1607, and settlers began growing tobacco on increasingly large plantations there and exporting their product. Reflecting the origins of the product, Native Americans were commonly depicted on tobacco shops. Now, this goes back to what I'm telling you guys. A lot of these early statues and figures of the face of America at that time was Negro. Modern Native Americans don't look nothing like. The Powhatan Confederacy had been destroyed and its people enslaved for decades. It says at the time the sign was made, the Powhatan Confederacy had been destroyed and its people enslaved for decades. Okay, we got Yamasee / Seminole, because the Seminole come from the Yamasee. There is no Seminole Creek without Yamasee. But when you look at this Seminole Yamasee chief, look at the turban, how it's wrapped on his head, and look at the Mayan murals. It's exactly identical. And when I would look at old pictures of Seminole chiefs and Seminole Indians, and I looked at the turban, how it was wrapped, I noticed it's exactly identical to the Mayans and how they wore the turbans and the banana pack murals. And when you talk about the Seminole, the Seminole was just a confederation of southeastern tribes. There is no Seminole before the Yamasee War. The Yamasee, that a lot of the cultural regalia that the Seminoles wore and a lot of southern tribes come from the Yamasee, the turbans. Now this is a picture of the Yamasee War, them going to war with the British colonists. And then you see the turbans and the head wraps. And I notice when I look at a lot of the Yamasee and Creek and Seminoles, it's exactly identical to the Mayan of Mexico, the Incas of South America. When you look at, like, here's another example. Look at the Seminole Yamasee women. When you look at these Yamasee Indian females, and their regalia is identical to the people in Colombia, in South America. When you look at these so-called Afro-Colombians, Peruvians, these people are direct descendants of the Incas in Peru. So a lot of that culture was maintained, and when you look at these head wraps and clothing, this is how these indigenous people dressed before the Europeans came over here. And a lot of that Seminole culture was preserved. It's really Yamasee. So when you look at this, it says the Yamasee, whenever they would have a dark-skinned Seminole, they will refer to him, they would say, well, his Yamasee ancestry is showing. During this time period, why don't you see today's quote-unquote Native Americans in the imagery from the paintings to the statues in the 16th and 17th century? You don't see any. And when you look at the man on this man right here, this is in the 1740. And the other image, this is, I think, from the 16th century, but this comes from the Arnodus Montanus book, The New and Unknown World about Arnodus Montanus, Jacob Ogabieta, and Jacob Mures did the paintings. That's the first ever book of America and indigenous people. This other image came up later. And it's showing you who the original American is. You don't see today's Native American. You don't see those images during that time frame. And is it a coincidence? No, it's not a coincidence. These are the people. You gotta look long and hard for this stuff, I'm telling you.